Part 18. Making love every night is inevitable. Day and night of cloud and rain made Xuan Huaifeng lie on the bed for several days. These few days, Bai Xuelan seems to be a little guilty. And he often sits around the bed to take care of it, serving tea and water, delivering rice and soup, etc., which were originally done by servants, but Bai Xuelan rushed to do it. Instead, it made Xuan Huaifeng even more embarrassed. If you want to scold, you have to stay in the house for one night for no one. And know that he also surrendered to Bai Xuelan when he knew it was raining. Xuan Huaifeng's self-pity was more than his anger at Bai Xuelan, and he couldn't fall face scolding. In the end, he could only lie on the bed and turn his face to one side, quietly looking at the thin and sparse bamboo outside the window to spend his days. After mixing like a paste for a few days, the discomfort in the lower body gradually subsided. Xuan Huaifeng felt that he could no longer be so decadent and humiliating. So he forced himself out of bed and reread the books and documents brought by Adjutant Sun. Bai Xuelan went to the General Administration of Customs for a meeting early in the morning and hurried to Xuan Huaifeng's room after returning. Stepping into the door with one foot, he stopped. Xuan Huaifeng was sitting sideways by the window, holding the book in one hand and the pen in the other, tilted his head to read the book. Then tilted his head to write a few words on a piece of white paper spread on the desk. He was wearing a sky blue long gown with a pair of snow-white cloth socks under his feet. He was probably afraid of the cold. A half-thin coat was loosely draped over his shoulders. Behind him was a partition window with a transparent fancy lattice, and the sunlight came from the pane. It penetrated in, and the soft cheeks were printed with concentration, and the bridge of the nose was straight and noble. It was so handsome that it was indescribable. Bai Xuelan warmed up, walked in quietly, went around behind him, and looked over. "What are you writing? You are so fascinated." Xuan Huaifeng was taken aback by him. He turned around and frowned at him. "Are you on purpose?" Bai Xuelan smiled and wrote most of Xuan Huaifeng's writing on the table. Pages of paper pulled up to look. The handwriting on it is beautiful and clear. But it is not readable by ordinary people. It's all in French. Bai Xuelan laughed. "You're working too hard." Xuan Huaifeng didn't want to talk or laugh with him. And he didn't want to get angry with him, so his expression softened. Adjutant Sun said that the people from the General Administration of Customs have to talk to foreign countries. When dealing with people, it's best to learn another foreign language. I think what he said makes sense. Bai Xuelan asked. "French? No one in the entire General Administration of Customs is more familiar than me, or I will teach you." Xuan Huaifeng brought over the reference book, closed it and looked at it. The name was written on the cover. It was the old book he had used. It wasn't a big deal at first, but I felt a little happy in my heart. Xuan Huaifeng said nonchalantly. "Thank you for not being sensitive. Chief, you will give me some private study time, and my subordinates will be grateful. A pair of clothes, accompany me to dinner." Xuan Huaifeng was taken aback. "What dinner? Where's Adjutant Sun?" "Adjutant Sun was sent by me to do something else. This is a dinner on official business. Since you are an adjutant, going out with your boss to socialize is the most common errand in the future. It's not surprising. Well, today's occasion can be relaxed. You don't have to wear a customs uniform. You wear a long gown with a smell that others can't wear. It is not easy for ordinary people to wear the charm of this long gown. Since it is a shared responsibility, Xuan Huaifeng can't say anything. However, when Bai Xuelan pointed out what clothes to wear, he felt very uncomfortable, as if he was someone Bai Xuelan now. He opened the full wardrobe. And he didn't even look at the conspicuous black satin gown. He deliberately wanted to find an unobtrusive one. Looking around, the clothes in the wardrobe were all brand new and dazzling. I don't know how much Bai Xuelan squandered on this. Xuan Huaifeng had no choice but to take a gray suit with dark silver from the corner and change it out behind the screen. Bai Xuelan knew that he was deliberately disobeying his intentions, and he didn't show any displeasure. He looked at it admiringly, nodded and said, "It's a natural clothes hanger. Let's go, or others will be impatient." When the white mansion came out, he was still in the black car with the license plate of the chief of customs, and 2 escort cars were added to the front and rear. And the soldiers with the box guns on their waists followed neatly. The fleet swaggered across the city. When they got there, the driver came down and opened the door respectfully. Xuan Huaifeng followed Bai Xuelan, bent over and stepped out of the car. Looking up, he saw a large house with double eaves and a mountaintop, with a golden pillar gate and a large plaque hanging across the eaves. 3 words. Xuan Huaifeng knew it was Feng Yuedi. Although his father was a bandit-like warlord, his family education was also very strict, and he was never allowed to enter such a place. He was about to turn around and go back to the car. But Bai Xuelan grabbed his wrist and pulled it gently. "When the water is clear, there will be no fish. You are not afraid of shadows. You have read a lot. But you don't even understand these principles? Let's talk about it. Now, this is the official business of the General Administration of Customs. When you go out to do things, everyone can't escape the 4 characters of Shu and Wei." Xuan Huaifeng moved his lips, but before he made a sound, Bai Xuelan lowered his voice and said, "Don't be afraid. Here it's different from that kind of rambunctious small courtyard. If it's that dirty place, I don't even bother to come." The people inside happened to hear the convoy arriving, and hurriedly rushed out to greet it. "Mr. Pai, welcome. You're a real admirer for the chief. Please come in." Bai Xuelan smiled brightly. "You are too polite. How dare Xuelan be?" As he said, he squeezed Xuan Huaifeng's wrist. He didn't let go and dragged Xuan Huaifeng into the building. Speaking of which, the Golden Pillar Gate was only used by officials of the 7th rank and above in the Qing Dynasty. It seems that this large house was also the official residence of the old Beijing. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help himself, and was pulled by Bai Xuelan, and it was not easy to wrestle with Bai Xuelan in public. He stepped into the threshold and could only bite the bullet and go inside. Fortunately, there was nothing too bad. The blue curtain of the gatehouse is low. The wooden windows have a 3-bar pattern. The floor is covered with cross birthday patterns, and a pair of couplets carved on the wood on both sides of the pillars reads, "Peach blossoms everywhere bring warmth in spring, and the colors of spring come back every year." This shows that it is a bit of a romantic relationship, and Xuan Huaifeng is a bit pity. Although the sun has not yet set, the lights are already bright everywhere in the building. Everyone entered the main room together, and a table had been set up inside. 2 or 3 women in fancy dress are chatting softly. Seeing that the men have come in, they are busy standing up to greet them. Everyone invited Bai Xuelan to take the seat. Seeing that Xuan Huaifeng was handsome and elegant, with the style of a noble young man who didn't eat the fireworks of the world, they couldn't figure out his origin for a while. So it's not good to be rash. When Bai Xuelan saw it, he pointed at Xuan Huaifeng and said, "This is Xuan Huaifeng who came back from studying in the UK. I have admired him for a long time. And it took a lot of effort to ask him to show his face to the General Administration of Customs. Now, he is my lieutenant." Only then did everyone realize that this was a new celebrity. And they all paid attention to Xuan Huaifeng. After a while, we sat down and gave another introduction. It turned out that there was a group of bosses gathered. 4 or 5 of them were in the business of imported products, and the remaining 2, Xuan Huaifeng couldn't see what they were doing for a while. So he just listened to their self-introductions, do a little business. The only exception was a young man of 25 or 6 years old, wearing a light-colored suit and looking clean. But he was a little restrained in front of everyone and reported himself to be the deputy principal of a certain elementary school, surnamed Dai. Xuan Huaifeng himself had taught, so he could not help looking at him a few more times. On the table is the Shangba Zhen banquet, and the wine is the famous Yuliu brewery in Beijing. Bai Xuelan is used to seeing this scene. Which is the meaning? Two gorgeous women eagerly refill him with wine. A woman was also arranged beside Xuan Huaifeng. Seeing that Xuan Huaifeng was too quiet, he only occasionally put a chopstick in his mouth and slowly chewed it, but he didn't drink a glass of wine. It was useless to persuade him with a smile. Then he twisted his body and refused to obey. Poured the wine, held it with a handkerchief and handed it to Xuan Huaifeng's mouth, making Xuan Huaifeng quite embarrassed. Bai Xuelan smiled and drank from the cup handed over by Crisp next to him. To pass, Xuan Huaifeng said, "The British talk about gentlemanly manners, while we Chinese talk about another. Called to have tender. Isn't it hurting her face when the girl is sitting dry? It's not poison, why don't you take a sip?" Everyone followed Bai Xuelan's meaning and laughed and coaxed. The girl was stared at by them and put her hand to Xuan Huaifeng's mouth. If Xuan Huaifeng didn't appreciate her face, she would really be teased by the sisters after she went down. She moved over and softly urged, "Good Lord. Just drink this cup, it will fulfill my wish." Slim stood up, held the cup with both hands, and treated him pitifully. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't bear to slap her face and had no choice but to drink. "Okay." Everyone cheered loudly. Xuan Huaifeng knew that Bai Xuelan was deliberately playing tricks on him, and he saw Bai Xuelan smiling and watching, taking advantage of everyone's inattentiveness. He stabbed him fiercely. The girl sat down happily with the empty glass, and filled it again. Xuan Huaifeng was afraid that she would make trouble again, but she spoke very decently, and said softly, "I don't dare to embarrass me again. You can drink as much as you like. It's my blessing to drink 2 more cups, and it's okay if you don't want to drink. I know that a noble like you is very good at taking care of your body." Xuan Huaifeng was considerate for her, but he didn't care about her. He gave her a soft look, picked up the cup and drank happily. The girl was overjoyed and poured wine and vegetables for Xuan Huaifeng, like a flower deciphering words, becoming more and more gentle and charming. So far, everyone has come up to drink. After a series of cups, everyone was getting a little drunk, and the curtain outside was suddenly lifted gently, and a girl in a palace costume walked out. At the age of 15 or 16, with a face as big as a palm, and delicate eyebrows and nose bridges, in terms of appearance, she is better than the few women present. Holding a pipa in her arms, she came to Bai Xuelan, squatted deeply, pursed her lips and said nothing. Bai Xuelan looked at her and asked the 2 people across from her, "Boss Wang. Who is this?" Boss Wang pointed at her and smiled. "This is my new goddaughter, a tender girl. She just turned 14 this year. Although she is not very mature, her temperament is still gentle." Chief Pai admires her face and asks her to sing 2 songs for you. "If it catches your eye, I will ask you to love her more in the future." Bai Xuelan smiled, "If you send a free song to your ear, who wouldn't laugh at it? Pick a song that you are good at and listen to it." Xiao Feiyan kept her head down, very shy. She listened to Bai Xuelan's answer, and she squatted again, before sitting on the horizontal stool by the wall with her pipa in her arms. After tuning the strings and singing in a thin voice, it is actually a Cantonese minor. When Bai Xuelan heard this, he called out "Okay," turned his eyes to Xuan Huaifeng, and said with great interest, "When I heard the local accent, do you feel any intimacy?" Boss Wang asked. So, the adjutant Xuan is from Cantonese? Bai Xuelan said. Exactly. Xuan Huaifeng, however, was not as interested as they were. Looking at the Huaifeng, she was pretty and exquisite. And she was a beautiful woman, but unfortunately, she could not avoid being a plaything, and sighed secretly. Huaifeng finished singing a song, and everyone applauded. She didn't dare to sit still. She stood up, and squatted again, holding her pipa and standing aside, letting the men comment. Boss Wang beckoned to her and asked her to stand beside Bai Xuelan, and asked with a smile, Chief Bai. How is it? This girl is quite smart? I want her to bring tea and water when I'm busy and ask her to sing 2 songs when I'm free, is still very well behaved. Bai Xuelan put down the chopsticks, propped his chin with one hand, and glanced at her with a smile. Is it clean? Boss Wang hurriedly said, It's absolutely innocent. If it's not clean, I wouldn't dare to send it under your nose. Kneading, not knowing what to think. Seeing what he meant, Xuan Huaifeng seemed to intend to accept it. This is really a waste of people. He couldn't help turning his body to the side, and softly persuaded Bai Xuelan, Chief, is this child a little younger? Bai Xuelan said casually, Really? I'm still thinking. It's rare to be your hometown, so it's good to bring it back to serve you. If you miss home, ask her to sing you 2 Cantonese minor tunes, which can also relieve nostalgia. They all followed Bai Xuelan's words. That's right. If Adjutant Xuan sees her eyes, it is her destiny. Adjutant Xuan is such a talented person and a gentleman who has studied abroad. If she can serve such a man, what woman would not be willing to do so? Wangkin? Xuan Huaifeng unexpectedly turned his head on himself, and said sternly, Absolutely, I will never do such a thing. Everyone still wanted to persuade. Bai Xuelan gently took the head over. Xuan Huaifeng is from a family background and has a lot of rules, so don't make it difficult for him. Boss Wang's kindness is in the heart of Bai Xuelan. It's a pity that this Huaifeng is too clever, and ordinary people have no luck. Seeing Bai Xuelan's rejection, Boss Wang had no choice but to refuse. Again, pick up the cup to toast Bai Xuelan. Huaifeng had a shy face, and quietly retreated to the wall to stand. Her eyes were red with tears, and she resisted falling. Xuan Huaifeng didn't know why, but instead apologized. It's just that since he has already refused, he is too embarrassed to provoke her again. So he can only drink silently with a cup. After a few drinks, they listened to the chatting and laughing on the table, and they talked about the romance, without a trace of official business. Xuan Huaifeng became impatient, but it was difficult to bring it out on his face. The vice principal was also silent. Obviously, like him, he was not very comfortable with such occasions. Dai Min was holding back, and when he saw Xuan Huai's question, he breathed a sigh of relief, and said with a bit of caution and politeness, I work in a compulsory school full of poor children, some of whom are still orphan. The school's name is Xinsheng Primary School. It is very small, and to be embarrassed, it is very simple and isolated. And the school is located at, reported an address. Xuan Huaifeng had never heard of that place and knew that it was a very remote location. Strange in my heart. I don't know how this person would get involved in such an occasion. However, when he asked directly, the other party couldn't get off the stage. He pursed his lips and didn't say anything further. He is not as secretive as Bai Xuelan, so Dai Min guessed something from his expression, and said actively, Actually, I came here this time to hitch a ride. It's a little thing about my school. I want to disturb you. Let's go to Chief Pai. Xuan Huaifeng became curious. Isn't the school under the control of the Ministry of Education? How did you find out about customs? Others listened to them when they saw them chatting. That's right. The situation in this school is a bit different from other schools. Most of the students' families are poor, and the school often gives them some tuition reduction or exemption. This is especially true for orphans. They try to provide room and board as much as possible. In this way, the cost is also large. The funds are usually almost exhausted by the middle of the year. Dai Min's white face showed a hint of embarrassment, looked at Bai Xuelan, who was silent, and said, I relied on the customs office a few years ago. Director Shui of the General Administration, his wife loves to do charity, and donates a sum of money to the school every year. The students also have a place to live. But now, Mrs. Shui has gone to Shanghai with her husband. Xuan Huaifeng sighed listening, nodded silently, and turned to look at Bai Xuelan, Chief. What do you think of this? Bai Xuelan took a chopstick and slowly ate the dish in his mouth, and said with a smile, Of course, it is a good thing to do charity. But I already have several errands under my name that pledge donations every year, like the Women's Painting and Calligraphy Association, which advocates respect female. 2 female students came to the General Administration of Customs with a book and asked me to see each other. They immediately forced me to donate a sum of money every quarter. I was afraid of the trouble. It's not that I have no kindness, Bai Xuelan. The place to donate is too much. The General Administration of Customs is not a bank. Do I send all the money from the country to everyone for the new year? Besides, I have only met Mrs. Shui once, and now, just because I took over her husband's position, I am asked to send it to everyone. She has accepted all the good deeds she did at the beginning, which is too embarrassing for me. The people around agreed, yes, it's true. It's hard enough to accept. The man came back, very embarrassed. His neck was red. He was silent for a moment, and said in a low voice, Mr. Pai, if we don't really have nothing to do, we won't lose this face and fight against others. We spent the winter last year, the school can't pay salaries, and most of the teachers have left. It's snowing so hard that they can't even get the money to buy coal, and a few students have been frozen. Seeing that the new semester is coming, children who have a family can still pay for it. Some paper and pen expenses, those who have no parents and no mother, don't have a piece of paper. It's really pitiful. Xuan Huaifeng rarely saw such a good principal, and couldn't bear to be poured cold water on him by Bai Xuelan again. Before Bai Xuelan could speak, he came in and said, Mr. Dai, you've made your case very clear. How to do it? Wait for our chief to go back and think about it. If there is an answer, I'll call you in person. Can you leave contact information? How dare I bother you? Dai Min gave him a grateful look, quickly took out a pen and paper from his pocket, wrote a phone number, and handed it to Xuan Huaifeng. There is a phone in the guild hall where I live, and Deputy Xuan has it. What are your orders? If you want the guy to leave a message and tell me the time and place, you will definitely come to visit. Xuan Huaifeng put the phone number in his pocket and said, Don't worry. He glanced at the corner of his eye, just in time to see Bai Xuelan raising his lips playfully. Laughing, obviously knowing that Xuan Huaifeng went back to ask him, he was happy. Now that Dai Min's matter has been dealt with, the others took advantage of this opportunity and had something hidden in their hearts, so they immediately brought it up. Boss Wang seems to be a brain among these people. He rushed over to give Bai Xuelan a toast, and asked tentatively, Mr. Pai, do you need to adjust the customs tariff recently? Bai Xuelan laughed, You guys are really sharp. Did you hear the wind so soon? Did you give any of my subordinates money to let him leak the wind? Everyone hurriedly laughed and denied it. How can we have such courage? Who doesn't know that Chief Pai is young and promising, and since he took office, the reform of the system has achieved many results. Young elites have unlimited prospects. A big move. There are rumors outside the street that the taxation of foreign purchase prices may be abolished, and the taxation of domestic sales prices may be replaced. Tisk, this is really not easy. Xuan Huaifeng heard this and knew about the banquet. What is the purpose? Secretly surprised. He didn't expect that Bai Xuelan's hands and feet were so fast. He only mentioned a few words. And Bai Xuelan actually started. It seems that others say that Bai Xuelan is vigorous and resolute, quite practical, and not all flattery. Oh? Bai Xuelan put his arms around the girl next to him and let her sit on his lap, touching her face and stroking her shoulders, and asked casually, "What's not easy?" "This. For example, I'm dye cloth from the factory." The boss, surnamed Joe on the opposite side, said cautiously, "There are several kinds of high-grade dyes that have to be imported from India. As for the best white-gray fabrics, Japanese products are the best. Importing only a few of these things every year costs money. Not a lot. Now the market competition is fierce. And those of us who have worked hard for many years, the only thing we can rely on is to have a good relationship with foreigners, and the price they give us is cheaper than other counterparts. In this way, the customs tax is also a little lower, and the cost is barely passable. Now, if we really change the old way of customs tax, we will not even have the benefit of suppressing the cost. In the end, we still have to earn it back from the customer." "Yes, that's the truth. Mr. Pai, you are a big Buddha," Boss Wang flattered with a smile on his face. "Stomping your feet will make the ground tremble 3 times. You can change the rules at random. By then, the prices on the streets will skyrocket. And everyone will complain." Bai Xuelan let them say one sentence to the left and one sentence to the right, but didn't snort and laughed, pulling the girl sitting on his lap to tease. When everyone's lips were dry, he snorted and smiled, "Forget it, all of you have a house full of gold and silver, and how much tax is missing? Some of those foreign businessmen are oblivious to money. In order to do your business for a long time and make money from our Chinese people, they will pay as much as you want him to write. Those colorful and handwritten bills are sent to our General Administration of Customs, let alone the truth. Half of the amount, in my opinion, is not even 1/3. The crowd even called out injustice, and all of them said, "The conscience of heaven and earth, the bill is real, and I never wrote a penny less. We did it all." People who have been in business for many years, first-class citizens, still don't understand the truth that paying taxes is for the country? No matter how much money you think about, you don't think about the taxes that the country should collect. If I tell you a joke, you will be serious. Bai Xuelan laughed and waved his hand at Will. "Don't worry, what's going on? I have to think about it. You can just do your own business, don't listen to rumors." Xuan Huaifeng was originally admiring Bai Xuelan's strength. Suddenly hearing him turn his tone, he couldn't help but startle. The people on the other side were already happy, taking out the bag, coughing, winking, or offering it by themselves, or someone outside the door was ready to bring it up. "Mr. Pai, a little thought is not a respect. Bills, antiques, pearl chains, all colored things piled up on the small half of the table. One of them is a 6-inch high emerald steed. The whole body is emerald green, with no flaws." Even Xuan Huaifeng was secretly surprised when he saw it. This group of people was so generous. Such treasures should have been lost from the royal family, and they were given to Bai Xuelan casually? Bai Xuelan glanced at the dazzling array at the table, and smiled lightly. "That's very polite." Flick his fingers. 2 of the guards standing behind them walked forward and put away the things on the table one by one. When he was about to pick up even the emerald horse, Bai Xuelan suddenly said to the guard, "Don't move this one." He asked the girl on his lap to stand aside and swept the audience around before asking, "This great gift, who sent it?" "A man in a black short coat, who looked very capable." stood up and cupped his hands. We are the head of Zhou, and I asked him to bring him here to honor the chief. Xuan Huaifeng recognized it. He was when introducing yourself, saying that you are a small business, one of the vague words. Bai Xuelan picked up the emerald horse and weighed it. This is a rare thing, a whole piece of high-quality emerald. This horse weighs 8 or 2, right? The man smiled and said, the chief is really divine. Listen. Our boss said that this is something that flowed out of the palace of the Qing dynasty. It was admired by Lafayette 6C in the past. It was just 8 taels of $8. Putting it on the chief's white mansion and adding some fun is also our filial piety. Bai Xuelan was not there. He let out a small sigh. It's a good thing, but unfortunately, I can't take it. Take it back and thank Boss Zhou for me. I've made it clear long ago. A powerful light flashed in Bai Xuelan's eyes. And he said coldly, everything can be done, the only thing that can't be tolerated is opium heroin. You are also smart people, listen to my advice. A few big smokehouses under your control should be remodeled early, and a nightclub or a mahjong parlor should be opened. Why not take the brothers to make money? Why insist on taking this dead end? The man's face sank, and he said with a sneer, Chief Pai, since you take office, we treat each other with courtesy all the way. When are you not respectful? If you want to be filial, just say it. As the saying goes, it is convenient for others and convenient for yourself. Biting people, don't you think? As he said. There was a hint of evil spirit between his brows. The air in the room suddenly froze, and everyone was silent. Several guards moved up quietly behind Bai Xuelan and surrounded Bai Xuelan in a circle, with their hands on the gun case, and their eyes widened. Only Bai Xuelan was the most calm, stared at the man's eyes, and said word by word, I am the golden body of a Buddha. If the rabbit wants to bite me, you should first weigh yourself. In short, as long as I, Bai Xuelan, stay in this position for one day, I will block the way of smoke and soil for a day. Foreign opium is going to break through my customs, and those who are not afraid of guns will come. After speaking, he stood up, bowed his hands to the people present, and said with a smile, Excuse everyone, this drink is very drinkable. Yes. I will return the table in the future. He led Xuan Huaifeng and the guards out of the room. All the bosses and girls were sent out in a hurry, and only the man in the black coat remained in the room. When they were going downstairs, they suddenly heard a vicious scolding, damn, from above, followed by a loud bang, and the sound of ping-pong bangs. It seems that the whole table of wine and food was turned over by the man. Everyone was dumbfounded and laughed. But Bai Xuelan didn't care at all, chatting and laughing with the people on the left and right, while walking down. The girl who was drinking from Xuan Huaifeng was also escorted to the gate. Xuan Huaifeng knew that they all depended on the guests to make a living, so he took it out in his pocket, only to find that the money that Bai Xuelan put into his pocket before going out was all $10. Thinking about Bai Xuelan's money, there is no need to feel distressed. I took two $10 and put them in the girl's hand. She didn't expect Xuan Huaifeng to be so lavish, and she was overjoyed. After receiving the money, she reluctantly took Xuan Huaifeng's hand and asked, Master, are you coming tomorrow? Xuan Huaifeng said, Don't keep calling me master, it sounds awkward, just call me Adjutant Xuan. The girl answered and asked with a smile, Then are you coming tomorrow? Xuan Huaifeng shook his head. The girl was not depressed either, she held his sleeve and shook it coquettishly. Adjutant Xuan, if you don't come tomorrow, come the day after. Otherwise, if you pass by in the future, come in and sit and walk again. If you come, tell the guys to look for it. Pear blossoms will be fine. He kept taking Xuan Huaifeng to the side of the car, closing the door and waving a silk handkerchief violently inside. After eating hard and drinking a lot of wine, Xuan Huaifeng exhaled when he saw the car driving back along the way he came, leaning on the back of the seat and closing his eyes slightly. Bai Xuelan took him into his arms at once and laughed and teased, "You will take advantage of it. It doesn't hurt to spend my money indiscriminately. I will give that woman 20 yuan all at once." Blushing cheeks. Xuan Huaifeng felt suffocated after drinking, so he rolled down half of the car windows when he got in the car. As soon as the car started, the wind blew on the hot people's foreheads, and his drunkenness immediately deepened, and he was not as vigorous as usual, and waved Bai Xuelan lightly. The hands that made his cheeks itch, he frowned and said, "You took so much money just now that you were greedy and perverted the law, and you couldn't even give 20 yuan to a hardworking woman? Be careful to be too complacent and do a big somersault." Bai Xuelan sighed. He said, "She needs you to look at her differently. Touch her little hand and hand over money. What's the pain? I envy her instead. If you treat me like her, and occasionally pity me, or let me feed you a few glasses of wine, then okay." Xuan Huaifeng refused to mess around with him on these matters. He held his hands and sat far away from him, asking him, "That person just now looks like a gangster. Aren't you afraid of him getting revenge on you? Little one, come on, what am I afraid of him? If his boss is not honest, I will deal with it. Are you so powerful?" Bai Xuelan deliberately let him stay away, and suddenly leaned over and dragged him back into his arms. Smiled softly against his hot earlobe, "I'm amazing, don't you know the best?" Xuan Huaifeng noticed that someone was slowly touching his lower body through his trousers, and he suddenly woke up most of the time. Pushing Bai Xuelan away, he suddenly sat upright, staring at him sternly. "Don't go too far." Bai Xuelan was furious in his heart, but seeing the car walking on the street with a driver in front of him, he didn't want to hurt Xuan Huaifeng too much, making it difficult for him to raise his head in the future. He smiled and sat down on his seat without saying a word. When they arrived at the White Mansion, Bai Xuelan followed Xuan Huaifeng's footsteps into the room, closed the door, and rushed towards him as if a hungry tiger had captured a sheep to play with, to do all the tricks. Tears rolled in Xuan Huaifeng's eyes, and he let it out a few times. Seeing that Bai Xuelan didn't give up, he couldn't stand it anymore, so he had to ask for mercy. Bai Xuelan laughed and scolded half-truths, "It's better for you to enjoy, it's like being tortured. If my hands were on that surnamed Lin, you wouldn't know how happy you would be." Pressing Xuan Huaifeng forcefully, solidly did it a few times, holding Xuan Huaifeng tremblingly spitting out a lot of white liquid. He asked Xuan Huaifeng, "If Lin Qijun knew about these things between you and me, would he still look at you?" Xuan Huaifeng was frightened and angry, closed his eyes and grit his teeth. Bai Xuelan had guessed that he would do this, and sneered a few times, "Don't worry, as long as you don't hesitate to push me out like a waste, I'm very grateful. Naturally I'll keep it a secret for you. Even Nian House's affairs will be kept secret. Don't leak the wind." From that night, Bai Xuelan changed his original style, and went to Xuan Huaifeng's room every night to spend the night. Wine, feeding aphrodisiacs, everything is used to the extreme. Not only did he raise his eyebrows, but he also had to ravage Xuan Huaifeng to the point where he vomited not a single drop, in order to be satisfied. Xuan Huaifeng fought with him for more than 2 months. The sky was not working, the ground was not working, and he was exhausted. He also knew in his heart that he could not get out of the palm of this demon king, so he could only accept it. And gradually he was no longer like a thorn. Bai Xuelan secretly felt pity for a long time. Seeing that Xuan Huaifeng was a little convinced, his attitude improved immediately, and he tried his best to be gentle. Whatever Xuan Huaifeng asks, he will all agree. There is only one exception. Love every night is inevitable.